podcast, bringing the best of the HR and talent communities to you.
Welcome to another episode of the HRchat show. I'm your host, Bill Banham, and today I am joined by Niall Ryan-Jones, Head of Employee Experience at the world-famous retailer, Harrods. Niall, welcome to the show.
Hi, Bill. Great to be here. Great to be on the podcast and hearing my voice at some other time in the future. Not a pleasure, I have to say.
Okay, firstly, tell our listeners a wee bit about your career background up to Harrods.
So I have worked in retail for most of my career. I've been fortunate to work in a number of different retailers across the UK high street. I started my career in Primark, which is a low-cost retailer, and then worked my way up through various mid-market retailers, all the way up to my current role, which is in luxury retail. I had a brief foray into financial services about 3 years ago because madly I wanted to see what it was like to work in financial services, and it was a very valuable experience. But what I learned is that the pace of retail is much, much faster than in financial services. So I come back to retail, but haven't learned a lot within financial services as well.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Now, tell our listeners a wee bit about your role at Harrods. And for any listeners in the US and Canada who haven't heard of Harrods before, I can't believe there are any, Niall, but just in case, a wee bit about what Harrods is as well and what it does.
Okay, well, we're never arrogant enough to assume that everyone knows Harrods. So Harrods, it's a global local retailer, and what I mean by that is that we do have a global reach. So we reach 300 markets. We reach about 17 million customers a year. We have a target customer base of 1% of the world's highest net worth population. We serve countries such as China, the Middle East, America is a growing market, all the way down to Australia. We have 10,000 employees, and the bulk of our employees are actually based in London in our flagship store in Knightsbridge. And that's where most of our trade is generated, but we do have other stores in London airports, as well as airports across the Middle East and Europe as well. But the lion's share of our business is actually driven by the store in London. And incidentally, we're so busy and successful that we're actually the highest grossing single-site department store in the entire world. So our challenge is that we need to make our walls expand more so we can get more customers and more product in.
So as head of employee experience there, Niall, tell us a bit about what your role involves and what a typical, if there is such a thing, a typical working week looks like for you.
Sure. So I actually have a purpose defined for my role within the business, and I guess it's probably useful to start off with that is, and where I'm expected to add value to a brand like Harrods. So I lead the co-creation of an employee experience which is guided by a commitment to be a responsible employer that makes a valuable contribution to employees' professional and personal goals in a work environment which reflects the DNA and cultural strengths of Harrods, and where this fosters a greater willingness amongst employees to exceed customer expectations. Now that sounds very corporate, but basically the essence of that is my role is to make sure that the experience employees have with us as an organization is complementary to and is aligned with what we expect our employees to deliver for our customer. So we don't have any incongruence in that relationship whatsoever, because our business is all about relationships. In terms of a typical working week for me, because I look after so many employee touch points, it's quite varied, which is a fantastic part of my role. And typically, at the beginning of the year, we set out our objectives for all the areas that I look after where there are numerous employee touch points. And each week, actually, I have bi-weekly meetings with my team heads, where basically I'm just trying to understand the progress of our overall objectives. So whether it be in internal communications, we're communicating our new strategy So really getting people to understand the purpose of the business and the strategic goals that are helping us get there. Then I can switch over to our, we call it a corporate health department or a health and well-being department. And we'll talk about the work that we're doing to improve the well-being of employees. So we're really focusing on prevention and making sure that employees are healthy in the workplace and supporting them with the tools to help them lead healthier lives. And a very topical thing for us at the moment is the mental health of our employees, where it's something that is manifesting itself more prevalently, not just in our organisation, but in many organisations. Then I could switch into other work. Then I lead the benefits and recognition team, and then we'll be looking at how we continually evolving our benefits offering, and also more importantly, what else do we need to be doing to demonstrate recognition of our employees. So that's an example of what's happening within my teams. I'm also a member of the human resource leadership team, because my function, it sits under HR, but I have to say it's got alignment to, and I partner many other directorates within the business. So for example, I also sit on the monthly IT leadership team meeting, because IT, they want to make sure that the systems that people are using within the business are fit for purpose and are enabling our employees to deliver for our customers and not detracting. Another team leadership team I sit on is the marketing leadership team, because we're doing a lot of work around defining new values that our customers connect with the organization. And we're also doing the same internally, where we're defining a new employee value set. So we want to make sure that there is synergy. It's not about making them the same, but synergy between the employee value set and the customer value set. And then there's other stuff that maybe not the most exciting stuff, but in the UK and Europe, GDPR, or data compliance legislation, is coming in May 2018. So again, it's another working party that I'm on, and it's a very important topic. It's very much about protecting the reputation of our customers and our employees' data. But my role in there as head of employee experiences, GDPR, or data compliance, and all the regulation that's coming in around that, that could be an example of something that a business would roll out and very much does so in a compliance mindset. So therefore talks about the things that we must do, and there will be repercussions and consequences for employees if they do not adhere to such regulations. Whereas us as a business, the way we see it is that we know our employees care deeply about our brand, and they wouldn't want to be part of anything that would damage the reputation of our brand. So we're very much communicating and getting everyone on board with the compliance that we need to deliver, by making sure that our employees are doing things that do not put the business at risk. So our brand's reputation, our customer, and even their own data for that matter. And actually we're finding that that's turning out to be a much more successful approach, because if we went to the staff or the employees about complying with data, legislation, etc., well, I think we'd pretty much get closed minds and a few yawns, to say the least. So that gives a snippet of what I would do in my typical working week.
This episode is supported by Deloitte Canada, the leading professional services firm offering consulting and advisory services to a wide range of clients in Canada and around the globe. Learn more at deloitte.com/ca.
Oh my goodness, you're a busy guy, Niall. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I'd love to understand a bit more from you then about, we talk a lot on this show about employee advocacy, and you just touched upon a couple of points there. I'd love to understand a bit more with such a prestigious brand as Harrods. What level of control do you guys need to retain with how your employees project that brand, what they say on social media, for example? Is it down to the fine details in their initial employee contracts, or is it more about ongoing education to ensure that people are projecting and retaining such a well-respected international brand?
Yep. It's a good question. So in terms of the practical elements and policy and procedure, yes, as part of our onboarding that we have a social media guidelines, and actually guidelines is probably the word I would emphasize, where in the past we had a social media policy, and we probably had, not probably, we did have a very different attitude to how employees would engage with social media in relation to Harrods. And the answer is that they didn't, and they weren't allowed to, etc. But of course, like many businesses, and we're not unique, hopefully the audience will realise as well that Harrods goes through the same challenges that everyone else does, is that we realise we have no control over what employees say about us, whether good or bad. And we felt that the approach that we had in the past, where we were saying to people, do not do it, was putting too much of a negative aura around social media and talking about the organisation. And also it's quite contradictory to what employees thought about our organisation, because we've done, as many organisations do, numerous employee surveys, and brand advocacy is at around the 96%. So we know that our employees love our brand and will always talk favourably about our brand. So therefore, why would we put restrictions around how they would talk about our brand, or put restrictions on them full stop? So it was probably about 5-6 years ago when the business overall started making a shift in terms of how it would use social media to connect with our customers. And at the same time, we thought we need to actually make a shift in terms of our attitude to employees using social media to talk about our brand. And what we do now is we actually upskill our team members to talk about us on social media, whether it's through Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, etc. So we have social media ambassadors within our business, and also we have upskilling workshops within our business as well. And we got our own hashtag that we encourage employees to use, which is hashtag #BeHarrods. And in our organisation, being Harrods has a lot more connotations around it, all positive connotations, where you're evoking the brand, you're the essence of the brand, you're an ambassador of the brand. And for where we are now, where people have these debates around whether you should moderate content or not, etc. We made the leap, and especially for a brand as precious as ours, it's paid off for us, where, yes, there might be the odd thing that sort of slips through, but 99.9% of the time, our social media footprint in terms of what employees say about it is extremely positive. And if we think about LinkedIn and how that supports our employer brand, we have a really strong employer brand. Lots of potential candidates connect with the organisation through what they read about us on social media, whether it's our Careers Week activity, or whether it's our corporate responsibility activity, or people sharing what they've learned in our learning and development programs, or even things like last year when we hired out Legoland for the day, and we sent all employees there and allowed and encouraged their families to join them. Things like that as well, where we just wanted our employees to sort of share what it's like to work within the organisation. But also, our employees use social media to connect with their customers as well. So WhatsApp is actually a tool that's used between customers and employees, not all customers, but where those employees have got really strong, deep connections with loyal, regular customers. WhatsApp is an example of something that they use between each other. So hopefully that gives a good understanding of how we've evolved our thinking around social media and employees' use of social media.
It certainly does. Thank you very much. Now, another reason why we're chatting today, as well as getting a chance to feature Harrods, which is an awesome brand, of course, is because you're a speaker at one of our partners, the media partner of the Global HR Trends Summit in Toronto, which is coming up pretty soon as we record this in early April. Can you tell us a bit about the session, the title, what it's about, and what are some of the hoped for learning outcomes?
Okay. So I talk about employee relationship management and customer relationship management, and how I believe that they're two sides of the same coin. And what spurred this, it's probably a conversation about 5 years ago when I was talking with the director of CRM. And it was just through that conversation we realized that actually we both had the same goals, where the director of CRM, of course, is trying to create loyalty amongst customers with the Harrods brand. And in my role and within HR and on our leadership in general, we're trying to do exactly the same thing, create loyalty amongst our employees with the Harrods brand as well. So what I did then was just explore, well, actually, what does that look like in sort of real life, day-to-day working environment, practices and all that kind of stuff. And working with that director and the marketing team, what I learned is actually that employees and customers have very similar needs. So that would be an example of something that I will share at the conference. I'm not trying to be a marketing expert, but there are some very basic, simple models that marketing use to understand its target audience, its customers, etc., and understand what matters to customers in their connection with the brand. And interestingly, they're very similar to what employees are connecting to a brand with as well. I talk about the typical touch points that organizations have with customers, and also I'll talk about the touch points that employees have with an organization through their employment life cycle. Of course, it's not just about, okay, well, there's similar things, customers, similar things, employees. If you're a customer-centric organization, what I hopefully will be able to share is that by looking at our employees through the same lens as we do with our customers, it then makes us realize, well, actually, are there things that we're doing internally that are detracting from us being able to deliver the best of ourselves to our customer, whether that's the brand universally, or whether it's an employee as an individual. And if there are things that are getting in the way of that, then what do we do about those things? I would emphasize as well that when I talk through my session, I hopefully will be able to get the audience to realize and share my understanding as well that, employee relationship management, employee experience, it's not really about the gimmicks, the free lunches, the pool tables and the canteen, all that kind of stuff. They're very momentary and they're not something that creates a lasting impact or a connection for a customer or employee. So I talk about the things that I do to support stronger relationships with employees within the organization. And I'll touch on what I do within internal communications, benefits of recognition, health and well-being, corporate responsibility, etc. And hopefully the audience will get to see that actually there's quite a strong connection between all those different functions, but also that how they actually espouse what we're trying to deliver for our employees and our customers, that we should treat both groups exactly the same. I will also talk about what I use to measure whether these things are successful or not, and from the data that we get, how that informs future thinking about evolving the employment life cycle for our employees. I would also hope that the audience realizes that even though I have worked for a luxury retailer and luxury retailers in the past, it doesn't mean that I have got limitless resources to hand. So I have the same pressures of lack of finance, resources, time, etc. And, as a luxury retailer, we have a shareholder as well who we need to deliver returns to. So hopefully from some of the examples and the tools that I talk about, the audience will get to see that actually there's some quite simple, relatively inexpensive stuff that actually can have quite a big impact on the employee experience, the employee life cycle, etc. So I will share some of the tools that I use, etc. And also I would hopefully get the audience to, or hope the audience takes away that when we think about the employee life cycle, it isn't necessarily about everything that's happening within the organization. That there are a lot of factors external to the organization that are affecting employees. Now, in the UK in particular, I don't know how widespread people know about Brexit, but UK leaving the European Union, it is an example of a political factor that's having quite a significant impact not just on Harrods as a retailer, but and not just on retail within the UK, but on health services such as the NHS, etc. So that's actually become quite a prevalent topic in terms of how do organisations manage and build the talent pool, and potentially what do we do if there are legislative inputs or policies that may make it harder for or restrict the amount of Europeans that can work for, an example, a brand like Harrods, because at the moment 36% of our workforce are Europeans. So just through my session, I hopefully will be able to get the audience to also realise that maybe there are other things that they don't typically think about outside their organisation that maybe are worth giving more consideration to as well.
Okay, thank you. That sounds great. Now, for those people who are not fortunate enough to go along to the Global HR Trend Summit in Toronto, Niall, are you speaking at any other conferences or summits in 2018? If so, feel free to give those a bit of a plug.
So no others in America. So and I don't know if people are traveling over to Europe, but I'm speaking at another HR summit in Beirut later in May, which hopefully that taps into the Middle Eastern audience. And of course, with these things as well, it gives me an opportunity to learn from the local markets, just as I really do hope to learn lots from the North American market as well. And also that I'm doing some other sessions with brands within the UK. So Volvo, which is a well-known European UK brand, I don't know how well-known in America, but that's an example of they're a customer-centric organisation, and I'm working with them, and I'm also learning from them as well in terms of how do we strengthen the relationship with employees to make sure that delivers an impact for customers for both our organisations.
Okay, we're coming towards the end of this particular interview. Before we wrap things up, just finally, how can our listeners connect with you, Niall? And how can they learn more about the work that you do at Harrods?
Probably the easiest way is to connect with me on LinkedIn, so Niall Ryan-Jones. And to learn more about what I do at Harrods, I've actually got a number of resources on my profile that people can read. So there's some case studies that have been done in the work that I've done in Harrods and on Harrods as an employer, etc. So there's some useful case studies to start reading straight away. But also I'm more than happy for people to connect with me directly as well. And, I don't know everything, so I'll share the bits that I do know that hopefully are useful to other people. And hopefully that creates opportunity for me to learn from other people as well.
Great. Well, that just leaves me to say today, Niall Ryan-Jones, Head of Employee Experience at Harrods. Thank you very much for being a guest on the HR Chat Show.
Thank you very much, Bill. Great to chat to you today.
And listeners, until next time, as always, happy working.
Thank you for listening to the HR Chat podcast, brought to you by the HR Gazette.